Hello everyone, I'm Pradyumna Sharma and I'd like to welcome you all to this new module of your ongoing course on oral history. Friends, in this session we are going to discuss about the topic interview techniques, structure and validity. The title of today's topic itself suggests that what we are going to learn in this session are about the nuances, intricacies and techniques of oral history interviewing, as well as we are going to deal with the issue of validity of oral history towards the later part of this discussion. So without further delay, let's proceed towards the center stage of today's discussion. And I would like to start our deliberation with a very pertinent question. And the question is, why interviews matter in oral history? Or why interviews are considered of so much of importance in oral history research? The preceding discussion will cover the significance or the place of interview process in the framework of oral history. Right? Let's proceed. Friends, we all know that interview is the heart of oral history. It is the core component of the very existence of oral history. The addition of interview component makes oral history more credible and more reliable. Being the core source material of oral history, interviews serve as the primary means through which the past is captured and preserved. Oral history interviews aim to record personal memories and lived experiences in narrator's own voice and thereby providing insights that are often absent from regular written or archival documents, archival records. These narratives not only reflect individual life stories but also illuminate broader social, cultural, and historical contexts. The overall quality and scholarly value of an oral history interview largely depends on the interview techniques employed by the historian. Or we can say that the quality of an oral history interview resonates the class of the interviewer. Effective interviewing enables the narrator to recall, articulate, and reflect upon experiences with clarity and depth, while poor techniques may result in fragmented, uh, superficial, and distorted accounts. Therefore, the interviewer's role in an oral history project is not merely to ask questions, but to create a conducive and ethically sound environment that encourages trust, openness, and meaningful recollection. Right? And in this context, it is essential for an oral historian to be well equipped with appropriate interviewing skills. Mastery of such techniques ensures that oral history interviews become rich, reliable, and human records of the past, providing voices that might otherwise remain unheard. That is the voice of the marginalized class. Coming to the next phase of uh, our discussion, it is about the phases of interview in oral history. Generally, in oral history project, there are three phases. Background research phase. The first one is background research. This is also the preparatory stage of the whole project. Second stage is, which is the central phase, This is called the interview phase. And third and final phase is called the post-production phase. Any and every oral historian, if they want to or work on oral history, must go through these stages in an oral history project. So, preparation for oral history interview. Okay, this is all about the preparatory stage, that is the first stage we have just mentioned. Okay, a good oral history interview demands meticulous behind the scene preparation. Careful and systematic interview preparation provides the basic structure upon which the entire oral history project rests. Without adequate preparation, even a well-intentioned interview may lack coherence, depth, and historical value. Coming to the next slide, interview preparation generally involves two broad stages. Background research related to the project, we have already mentioned about it, and it has a tail part, that is narrator specific research. So background research and narrator specific research are the two broad stages of the preparatory stage of the oral history interview. Now, what is background research? Background research enables the interviewer to acquire sufficient knowledge about the historical context, events, and themes relevant to that particular project. And this familiarity helps the interviewer to keep the conversation focused, understand references made by the narrator, and identify moments that require clarification or deeper exploration through appropriate follow-up questions. One may often ask, uh, what should be the main focus of the background research phase in the oral history research? Although there is no universal model for conducting background research, certain key aspects can be taken into considerations. Like first is project planning. The interviewer should prepare a clear synopsis of the project. This synopsis helps to identify significant milestones to the subject and also enables interviewees to understand the conceptual framework of the topic on which they are to be interviewed. Second aspect is the development of a proper timeline. The development of a proper timeline is considered useful for navigating the course of the interview, as it provides chronological clarity and helps to structure the narrative. Now, on the basis of this synopsis and timeline, the interviewer should meticulously prepare a broad questionnaire on the subject. Okay. And what is a questionnaire? A questionnaire is a set of structured and topic specific questions that guides the interviewer throughout the interview while allowing the narrator to develop a coherent and meaningful narrative. So these are the key aspects. Prepare a synopsis, develop a timeline, design a questionnaire. Another essential component of background research phase is the identification of potential narrators, right narrators. Now, how can you identify a narrator to be the right person for your project? Good narrators for an oral history interview are individuals who possesses first-hand and previously undocumented information related to the project. They should be able to communicate effectively, be willing to share their memories and experiences, and be reasonably comfortable with interview equipments in either video or audio format. So these are the key aspects of background research. Now, moving towards narrator-specific research. Narrator-specific research involves learning as much as possible about the individual to be interviewed, or his or her role in relation to the subject under study. Such research may include details of narrator's work history, life history, understanding his family and social background, noting his political and public involvement. All these uh, information, all this knowledge would help the interviewer, would equip the interviewer with the necessary context to frame meaningful and project related questions and appropriate follow-up inquiries. Moreover, narrator specific research plays a crucial role in building rapport between the interviewer and the interviewee during the course of the interview. Such preparatory work not only strengthens the interviewer's confidence but also ensures that the interview remains meaningful, accurate, and analytically rich, thereby enhancing the overall quality of the oral history record. Coming to the next slide. So, after being equipped with apposite ground and narrator specific research, which the interviewer has completed by now, the interviewer moves to the central part of his or her project, that is the interview phase. And in this phase, the interviewer must follow certain ethical and formal responsibilities. Informed consent. What is informed consent? The interviewer should first establish communication, contact with the interviewee, either through phone or email or through personal contacts, and clearly explain the focus and objective of the project to the narrator. After initial communication, an appointment should be scheduled at a time and place convenient for both the interviewer and the interviewee. This is very important and significant. Punctuality is an essential norm of oral history projects. The interviewer, therefore, must ensure timely arrival at the interview venue to maintain professionalism and build trust. Before the interview begins, all recording equipments should be thoroughly checked to confirm proper functioning. In addition, necessary documents such as questionnaire, notebook, consent or release form, and other relevant materials must be organized and kept ready for use. At the start of every interview, every interviewer should take a note very seriously of this particular point. At the start of every interview, the interviewer should record the name of the oral history project, the name of the interviewee, the name of the interviewer, and the date and place of the interview for the purpose of easy identification later on and for the purpose of also metadata. At the conclusion of the interview, the narrator should be asked to sign the release form, and you have to follow this procedure even if there is the possibility of successive sessions. If you are going to sit with the interviewer for another session, you have to secure the sign of the narrator for both the sessions. This is an ethical practice. So what is a release form? The release form serves as a formal agreement through which the narrator grants permission for the interviewer to use the recorded oral memories for academic, research, or creative purposes. Now, interview phase is over. We are moving towards the third phase, that is the post-production phase. At the end of the interview or following the interview, immediately organize all the recording media in your computer or manually you organize it. The recordings should be carefully transcribed. This is a very tiresome and very long process and need much attention of the interviewer. The transcription must be reviewed and approved by the narrator to ensure accuracy and authenticity. Once approved, the oral history material may be ethically and responsibly used as a source for a book, documentary, film, or a research paper. We are moving towards another important part of this discussion, that is interview guidelines and techniques. Interview techniques vary even from interview to interview, depending on the expertise of the interviewer and the cooperation offered by the narrator. But what remains constant is the maxims and guidelines of oral history encompassing interview. In this part of the discussion, we shall discuss in brief the major guidelines of conducting an oral history interview. These are some major guidelines of interviewing. Always remain mindful of the ethical responsibilities involved. An oral history interview is not a social exchange. It is not a casual visit or a confrontational debate over interpretation of the past. It is a carefully conducted dialogue in which narrators deserve dignity, sensitivity, and respect for their lived experiences and the stories they choose to share. Rely primarily on open-ended questions. Okay, this is another important aspect of important guideline, or you can say strategy of interviewing, that you should ask open-ended questions, because open-ended questions encourages narrators to speak freely and provide rich, detailed responses. Such questions invite reflection, personal interpretation, and storytelling rather than simple yes and no answers. By minimizing interruption and avoiding leading questions, open-ended questioning helps to ensure that the interview remains narrator-centered and the resulting testimony captures the depth, complexity, and authenticity of the lived experience. Use neutral, not leading questions. Another maxim. Neutral and non-leading questions do not impose assumptions or judgments on the narrator's experience. Non-leading questions allow the narrator to describe both positive and negative aspects freely, resulting in a fuller and more authentic account. If clarification is needed, make sure your elaboration does not lead the narrator to believe you expect a particular type of answer. Ask only one question at a time, not a bag full of questions that may puzzle the narrator. One of the major qualities expected from an oral history interviewer is to be an eager listener. Listen carefully without interrupting the narrator. This is another important maxims. The interviewer should put his or her profound concentration on what the narrator is saying. Take notes and wait until he or she finishes speaking, then ask follow-up questions for clarification or to develop new information that did not emerge in the research process. Okay? Keep the focus firmly on the narrator rather than on yourself. The purpose of background research is to inform your question and help you draw out the narrator's experience, not to display your own knowledge. Please don't take it otherwise. This is only a guideline. This is what the strategy says. Demonstrating or boasting about what you know can be intimidating or distracting and may discourage the narrator from speaking freely. Use body language and eye contact to encourage the narrator's responses. Smiles and nods are often effective. Silence, even uncomfortable silence, is also an effective tool to elicit information. When the narrator finishes responding to a question, resist the temptation to jump right in with a follow-up or a new topic. Let's change the slide. Okay. Use a notebook to keep track of follow-up questions, additional points to make, or other interview needs. This will help to keep you organized and will allow to continue to concentrate on the narrator. Also use your notebook to keep a running list of proper names, important. Proper names mentioned in the interview. It is a good idea to ask the narrator at the end of the interview to review this list and correct any spelling errors, okay, for metadata. Take breaks when necessary. Sensitivity to the narrator's physical and emotional well-being is essential. Such situations should always be handled with patience, flexibility, and courtesy. Remember to ask for specifics of place name. Again, this is important. Specifics of place name, names of people, and dates or context. Keep track of time. Make sure you don't extend the interview time limit. Take a photograph of the narrator in the interview setting. This should be done for both audio and video interviews. Even if it is a video interview, there should be a photograph. Sign the release form. We have already mentioned it with the narrator, because the interviewer is also to sign the release form. This should be done even if you plan more sessions with him or her. We have mentioned it. Okay, so these are some guidelines. We have discussed about the phases. We have discussed about the formal and ethical responsibilities of interviewers, and now we have finished discussing about the interview guidelines and techniques. Now let us move towards the validity of oral history interview. Okay. Validation of oral history is essential to ensure credibility, accuracy, and ethical use of personal narratives. It involves both methodological rigor and ethical responsibility. Okay, before we enter the question of validity, I would like to draw your attention to three very significant remarks on validity of oral history made by three renowned oral historians. They are Alessandro Portelli, Paul Thompson, and Job Hasina. All are renowned. The first two are renowned oral historian. The third one is renowned folklorist. Alessandro Portelli, in his must-read article named "What Makes Oral History Different?" in that particular article, he noted that the importance of oral testimony may lie not in its adherence to fact, but rather in its departure from it. Paul Thompson, the author of the canonical volume called The Voices of the Past, he remarks that oral history transforms both the content and purpose of history. And finally, the most remarkable quotation is from Job Hasina, the author of Oral Traditions as History. He has made this comment: all historical sources are flawed. The task of the historian is to assess their reliability. How true So, on the basis of these comments and remarks, we are going to discuss the question of validity of oral history. Critics are often skeptical about the credibility of oral history because of the involvement of memory. For them, how personal memory of someone can be objective? It is sure to be corrupted by subjectivity, right? However, uh, we all know that as a student of history, we all know that the very notion of objectivity in history itself dwells in very thin ice. Very thin ice. Of course, we are not going to discuss about the objectivity of history in this discussion. We are discussing about the question of validity. So, as an answer to the skepticism of the mainstream historians, the father figures of oral history have devised some opposite plans to validate the final output of oral historical research. Right? As a thumb rule of oral history research, every interview must be transcribed, and with transcription, it is converted into written document. Once it becomes a written document, by default it becomes a credible historical source as espoused by the mainstream historians. How? Because the dominant prejudice, or we as a common man, believe that factual credibility is the monopoly of only the written documents. So, the process of transcription turns the oral history interview into a properly credible historical source. But the responsibility of the oral historian does not end here. It is his responsibility to validate and establish the credibility of his own source. So oral testimonies should be cross-verified, should be compared with written records, archival documents, newspapers, official reports, photographs, and other oral documents. This process helps to identify inconsistencies, discrepancies, if any, and gaps, thereby strengthening the reliability of the narrative. Interviewing more than one narrator connected to the same event or community allows the researcher to compare perspectives. Overlapping memories help to validate key facts, while differing viewpoints enrich interpretation. Right? So, in conclusion, we may say that oral history is validated not by treating it as unquestionable fact, but by critically evaluating, corroborating, and ethically interpreting personal memories within a broader historical framework. Thus, when handled carefully, oral history becomes a powerful and credible source for understanding the past. So, this is for today. Let's stop here. Thank you, ladies and gentlemen. Thank you very much for your patience. Thank you.